already.
We're rolling already. I floss. We talked about this. I floss 3 times a day. I brush 3 times a day.
Well, yeah, but you don't need to floss 3 times a day.
No, I don't. I know. It's just because it's
You floss with
an old extension cord.
Oh, the ones that are red and blue, and you used
right.
to string Christmas lights on those. Yeah. I had that. My brother knocked this tooth out when I was 6 years old at Langhorne Park. Yeah. I blamed him for every problem I've had ever since.
Yeah.
Yeah. Love the boy.
And he's an accountant now, isn't he? He's a lawyer.
Very, very successful. Well, he's retired, but he still does a lot of tax accountant work, which is.
Did you file your taxes?
I did.
Last Thursday?
Aha. I did. I've actually already got, Betsy already got one of her refunds.
Excellent. My spouse received hers as well.
It seemed a matter of hours, not days.
Yes, it was, they say 40 some odd % of Quebecers have yet to file their taxes.
I'm not really surprised at that figure. Actually, I thought it'd be higher, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, well, it's been an extension. Is it June 30th or something like that? Anyway, I did the right thing.
No, it's even later than that.
I did the patriotic thing, and I sent them a check for $4,832.86. And by the time it arrived, they had spent it on potato chips at the PMI.
Fellas were going to the movies on Rideau Street, right? Yeah. They went to see some porn in dirty, mangy little club. Yeah. It's the 5th. It's the 4th.
No, it's the 4th of May already. 4th of May. And it's a cool gray day. I have nothing to
got a break yesterday.
I have nothing to show you. I built an obelisk yesterday.
Oh, yeah. I thought it was a pergola.
No, it was supposed to be shaped like this, but it turned out to be shaped like that. It's supposed to, en français, c'est un tuteur.
Un tuteur.
A tuteur, which is...
So it looks like an oil derrick?
Yeah, sort of thing. And it's supposed to guide the growth of a plant.
Yes.
So Madame...
We have one in the back, which has a Virginia creeper.
Yes. So what Madame does...
the neighbors climbing up it.
I'm in my office downstairs. She's upstairs sitting on the deck with her laptop. And she'll say, "Oh, wait a minute. I think I'll get Dickhead to build me an obelisk." So she sends me a photograph of it, and it arrives on my email. Ding, ding. And there's there's no rush. There's no rush.
See, so she's just communicating with you by email now, right?
And I'm out there 20 minutes later. Oh, that's fine. There's no rush.
Do you use exact measurements, or you just sort of throw the damn thing together?
I just found some scrap lumber, and I said, and then after 20 minutes, I turn around. This is the way it's going to look now, okay? This is what it's going to look like. It's got nothing to do with the picture you sent me. This is what it's going to look like. Okay, fine.
How tall is it?
It's about 6 feet.
You've got to record these things. Really? I mean, sound would be even funnier than with pictures.
Yes.
The Vuba, shit.
Yes.
Vuba.
Oh, yeah. In both official languages. I tell you.
Well, that reminds me of an old joke, but I'll tell it to you another time about making a novena.
Oh, it reminds me of a chapter I wrote for the 2nd edition of the Anglo Guide to Survival in Quebec. Do you remember that?
Oh, God, wasn't that Josh?
Here it is, right here. What do I think?
I'd forgotten you'd written a chapter for that.
It was for the second. It was for the second edition. Yeah.
Yeah, and Terry supplied the cartoons, right?
I just thought of this. Yes, it was. My God, what year was that? Anyway, and I, of course, being a Franco-Ontarian, I described myself as a hybrid, and I go on to talk about how I could curse in both official languages. My goodness, Eden Press.
Who was the editor? Was it Josh? Josh Freed?
I can't see right now.
It's probably on the front. It's on the front page.
And it's signed by Mike Boone.
Oh my gosh. Mike must have had an installment.
A guy
He's
I
a good
like.
writer.
A guy I like watching on television. Gee, thanks, Mike. That's something original.
That'll launch a few ships, eh, Mike?
Mike Boone. We got to get Mike on. And speaking of watching on television, here's the man. We'll bring him in here. He's the man who hired me in 1983.
Yeah.
And there he is.
Are you awake yet?
He's looking.
What are you watching television?
He's been on standby for 20 minutes.
Good morning, Yvon.
Can you hear me, Yvon?
No, he says he's connecting to audio.
Okay.
Hi there.
How
Good
are
morning,
you?
Yvon. How? My God, I haven't seen you in ages, pal. How are you?
Yvon Vadnais.
I'm very well. Yourself?
Okay.
I'm doing fine. He's sitting there having a martini at 10 o'clock in the morning. That's great.
No, I'm just having coffee this morning. Martinis are after 4 o'clock.
After 4 o'clock.
Here's the announcement. I want to make this public now. This is the man who hired me at CBC in 1983, so you can blame him for all of the mess that I've made of people's lives in the last 27 years.
Yvon, it's actually, it's your one regret, isn't it, darling?
It's not. It was wonderful working with both of you. We
had fun.
The great bunch of people we had at Newswatch was really a lot of fun. For example,
the first time he was on television after you hired him, he was on with me.
Yeah, well, it just goes to show you can't break that kind of a friendship, right? But
We've tried.
The thing is, I have some fond memories of you and Charlie Gursky.
Oh my God, the great, yeah. Well, both Yvon and I worked with Charlie on Late Newswatch, and one of the stories
Charlie was quite a character.
Yeah,
but we had a number of characters, right? We had a number of characters.
Oh boy, did we ever! Yeah. Most of them have gone to the great broadcasting house in the sky, actually.
Yeah.
But Charlie used to, or more than a couple of times, showed up without his glasses for his myopia, but without his glasses for reading as well. And I think this happened to you too, Yvon. He came in to do the sports one night, and he had a script that was about as thick as a phone book because he had to make the letters as big as a horse's leg because he couldn't read the teleprompter.
Written by hand,
Yeah, written in a huge block type of handwriting, and he plopped it on I thought the desk was going to collapse below him.
You could write a book on Charlie Gursky, on Charlie Gurskyisms. It's almost like Jean Perron, right?
Yeah. There's so many stories, and you'd like to believe them all to be true.
Let's have a look at your history here. Thank you for sending me your bio notes that talk about a journalist and a communications guy. He sends a full bio note background here. And I had no idea. You started at CFCF TV in 1964, but I had no idea that you started in the mailroom.
Well, it wasn't the mailroom. I was a news messenger, and I was working in the newsroom. But in those days, first of all, I just gotten out of high school. I didn't have a driver's license. I just had a driver's permit. So for the first 2 months, I was a news messenger accompanying a news messenger. And in those days, everything was done on film. So basically, my job was to pick up the film from the cameramen, wherever they were, with the reporter, and take the film to the lab, which was David Beer in the old Herald building there downtown, and then once the film had been processed, take it back to the station. So
I can't believe stuff got on the air the same day in those days. I mean, you have to have the film developed and everything, right?
Well, to have the film developed, and I don't know if you guys remember this, but when I first started at CBC, in those days, the supper hour show was called Hourglass, and Bob Girolami was the host, the newsreader. And to save time, they had an in-house processing lab, and to save time, they just developed the film negative. So basically what you did is, as the director, once it got in the telecine, well, on the projector, you had to reverse the technician had to reverse polarity on air. So sometimes you saw a report in negative rather than the actual film.
Oh,
so those were great days. And
interesting
days. No, they were. When I started at CF, I was working with a manual typewriter, and then we went to electric typewriters, and eventually at the CBC to computers.
How did you talk your way into CFCF? Because I understand your first boss was probably, what, Bert Cannings?
Bert Cannings.
That's right.
I remember Bert Cannings.
I worked with the crew at CF. The newsroom was incredible. You had Bert Cannings, Bill Draper, who probably holds the all-time Guinness record for being the assignment editor. I think he was there for more than 30 years before retiring. You had Bill Oakland, Charlie Yellowleaf, Tom Armour, Rocky McGowan, Mike Donegan. You know, it was an incredible newsroom.
Yeah, I remember Mike Donegan. Mike went on to be news director, didn't he?
That's right. When Bert left, Mike became the news director. So
you know, those with Dean Kay. Do you remember Dean Kay?
Yeah,
at CFCF television. So. Yeah,
yeah.
These guys were.
Well, Dean did Pulse in the early days.
Yeah.
Before, in fact, everybody did Pulse. Ted Murphy did Pulse. Even Dave Boxer was one of the announcers who did the news before doing the evening program on radio. And you've got to remember, in those days, CFCF was radio television. So basically, we were working for both. Just like at the CBC, you know, you could be doing a report for radio and at the same time doing the television report. In fact, I remember that in the cost-cutting days of the CFCF, Bert decided that we could only do 100 feet of film for an interview. Now, 100 feet of film is 2.5 minutes, and you really had to get the interview done within that 2.5 minutes, because the cameraman was told to turn off his camera and whatever was going on. So, you know, and then, you know, talk about cost cutting. Well, as you guys know, we went through that at the CBC a lot. In fact,
imagine 100 feet of film. That sounds actually frightening for any reporter interviewing somebody. That sounds scary.
So, you know, but when I got to the CBC and you could do 400 feet of 400 or 800 feet of film, to do a small interview that would be on air for 30 seconds. It made all the difference.
I remember the first you know, you could
really
piece
get
I
to
shot
the,
in '83 was on film. It was on 16 mil with Alberto Feo, the cameraman.
And when you cut and pasted in those days, it was physically cutting and pasting film together. I mean, I did it in radio with, you know, tape.
Yeah, with the razor blade, right?
Yeah, and the transparent tape that you'd connect
on a steam.
Well, that's right.
Right.
Yeah, my God.
That's right. No, you know, but you know, at CBC, CBMT especially was we were the poor cousins of the building, because Radio Canada, the Radio Canada building in Montreal is the headquarters for the French network. So CBMT was the poor cousin, and we had to scrounge a lot. In fact, your guest from last week, Brian Murphy, probably remembers when we decided, Brian and I decided that we needed a new desk for Newswatch. So the reception area of the CBC and the French network had decided to redo the reception area when you come in, and they had this big, huge mahogany desk that was sent down to the warehouse downstairs. So one evening, Brian and I went to the warehouse and got the desk and put it on rollers and took it into Studio 48. And the next day, I don't know if you were still doing the late show. Well, you were still doing the late show then, but I don't know if you remember that you had a brand new desk, and it gave a whole new look to the show. The content was still the same.
It wasn't that the
desk I've ever seen.
This hour has 3 desks or something.
Oh, this hour has 7 announcers.
Yeah.
That was with Kathy and George Finstad. Remember that, Yvon?
Oh, George Finstad,
wow.
Yeah. So, you know,
I remember that desk too. I think it came in just before Monsieur here joined us, and I thought it was the biggest desk I'd ever seen in my life. So you and Murphy liberated it.
Yeah, but in those days we had a great time because you could, you know, like we could move from radio to television, from the French network to the English network. It was really it was a lot of fun because as I said in the notes I sent to Yvon, every 3 years basically you could change jobs without changing bosses or company, you know. You went from radio to television. You know, you could do stuff for Radio Canada internationally. So you know, it's those were fun days.
So after CBC, RDS, was that right?
Yeah, I got a phone call from, I don't know if you remember Jerry Janito, who used to be at the CBC.
Yeah, I see Jerry called me up on Facebook all the time.
So Jerry called me up and said, well, I'm looking for somebody to put together the news department for RDS. So this was beginning of July. And I started at RDS on July 15th, and we were on the air September 1st. When I got there, the newsroom was basically an empty room with no desks, nothing, no computers, no desks. It had a couple of phones on the floor and basically no staff. I had about 200 CVs, mostly from people who had just finished at the ATM in Chicoutimi, which is the journalism school at Chicoutimi. And everybody they were looking eager to start at RDS. The only thing is we couldn't get anybody with really any experience at the time, because everybody thought it was going to be another cable network that, like they already had a sports network that was a community network on before RDS. And RDS came in about 4 or 5 years after TSM. In fact, we belonged to the same company, which was Labatt at the time. And within 5 weeks, we got we hired the people, did some rehearsals. In fact, the night before we went on the air, September 1st, 1989, we didn't make the deadline. We were doing rehearsals, but couldn't get it done on time. But on September 1st, we had prepared everything, because we had most of the stuff that we had was from the day before and that day, the earlier than that day, but everything was prepared. However, we were on at 6:30, and at 5:45, the Commissioner General of the National Baseball Association, the National Baseball League, Major League Baseball, died of a heart attack. So our first show was a cold opening. You probably remember, Dave, what his name was Giametti or something like that.
Giamatti. Yeah.
Giamatti.
He was a former Yale historian. Brilliant man.
So you should have seen the people running around the newsroom trying to figure out what we were going to do, and we had to do a cold opening, which was something that was brand new to them. So we got it on the air, and after that we got all our shows together on time ever since, for the 4 years I was there.
So the first big show was Sport France, right? I mean, it was basically the news show.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Sport France, yeah.
My God, I've forgotten about the Giamatti thing. That's a dramatic way to start.
It was. And the other thing is, you got to keep in mind that when we first started, we didn't have any archives. We didn't, we were scrounging again everywhere, So what I like about the things I've done in the almost 50 years is I spent a lot of time as an entrepreneur getting things started, doing startups. RDS was one, Canoe with the Québécois, or le Canal Argent was another. When for Cassette, I started Images et Son 2000, which was the first time I was doing consulting, basically teaching consulting and teaching business people how to deal with the media. So,
what appealed to you about starting things from scratch?
Yeah, a lot of them.
What was the appeal to you? You did start a lot of things from scratch. Why did you? I'd be terrified.
No, basically, the thing is, when there's nothing there, you can't make any mistakes. Like from the people who were there before you. You're starting from scratch, so everything you do is good. So it was a lot of fun, and the thing is, we're talking about RDS, and I was there for 4 years, and went back to CBC, French CBC, Radio Canada, because they called me up, and I was now a sports expert, although I am not. I didn't know the difference between. I didn't know most of the people, most of the amateur sports athletes and things like that. Outside of Georgia athletes, I guess I didn't know enough of a lot of these people, but. CBC Radio Canada called me and to work on the Olympics for Atlanta and Nagano. So that was again because I had done the Olympics for CBC in 1976 in Montreal.
Can't let you go without talking about your foray into politics. I heard the name Yvon Vadnais on the radio in 2015, running in Papineau. What possessed you to do that?
Well, the thing is, I decided to run for the Conservatives in Papineau because, first of all, Papineau is the riding where I grew up. I know the riding very well. Secondly, the main reason I wanted to do a political campaign was to find out what it was all about. There was not a chance in hell that I would get elected. I was running against Justin Trudeau in his riding. So, there was, and never, the riding of Papineau has never elected a Conservative. So the thing is, I wanted to find out what it was like getting the 125 signatures to become an official candidate, what it was like meeting the people, and that's the part I really, really enjoyed, being out of my comfort zone and meeting people, and people were great. It was a lot of fun. But one of the things I would like to mention before leaving is, and I put it in my notes, is one of the things I'm most proud of, and you guys were involved in this, was the clothing drive that we did for the Old Brewery Mission. When I was at Newswatch, I don't know if you remember.
I certainly. It was more successful than we thought in our wildest dreams.
Well, the thing is, I was doing midday with George Springate, and we had the head of the Old Brewery Mission. We said, well, this was in the fall, and one of the problems we have is clothing. For the homeless people that we look after. So I said to George, why don't we do a clothing drive? So George, with all his contacts, got 5 of the Montreal area, the major shopping centers, like Fairview and Rockland and Ville d'Anjou and Saint Bruno, I think. And so basically, to do the clothing drive, and we have these booths where all of the people from Newswatch and radio, most of the CBC people would be there to pick up, to greet the people and get the clothing. And I saw people go into Eaton's at the time and come out with brand new shirts or jackets for the clothing drive. The thing that happened is we ended up with 40 tons of clothing. And that was a major problem for the Old Brewery Mission because they had to rent warehouses for all this stuff. But the thing is, everybody did a terrific job on that. And that led to, the next year, the beginning of La Guignolée des médias. Because the French network the French network got a lot of calls saying, well, why is CBC doing this, CBMT doing this, or CBC Montreal doing this, and Radio Canada is not involved. And so they decided, they picked it up that following year, and then the other stations in Montreal did the same thing, and now it's an annual event.
I remember standing at a Shell station on the corner of Jean Talon and de Carey, Yvon, freezing my skinny little buns off, but it was always worth it because people would literally, I mean, you talked about people going into Eaton's and buying shirts and things. People would go shopping to get food and drop off, one person, not big companies or anything, drop off 10, 12, 15 bags of groceries. And that's what made it worthwhile. The response was very heartwarming.
And the guignolée has been relaunched for the pandemic for food banks right now. It's running right now.
Yeah, great idea.
I'll put a link up for that too. What's next? There must be something next in your timeline here, Yvon.
Well, I was in the process of negotiating a new contract with one of the big four. As you know, the last 10 years, I was at KPMG dealing with helping the teams prepare either conferences or pitches, basically some of the stuff that you're doing, but doing it exclusively for KPMG. And I was going to be, I was in Florida this winter, coming back this spring, and I was going to be starting again to do some of that stuff. And everything's been put on hold because of the Corona-19. So
yeah,
I'm just waiting for a call.
Right.
Well, listen, you haven't changed a bit. You look exactly the same.
That's yeah. It's criminal.
And I've been following you guys now. Like you're my late show because John and I get up fairly early in the morning. So before going to bed at night, I watch all of the shows that you've done. And one of the things that I like with Lisa Weiss that you did last week, one of the questions you asked, and it's been in the back of my head ever since, is how do you measure success? And I'm not sure I really got an answer for that, but I thought that was a great question, Yvon. And like your sister and like Elizabeth, Joanne is spending her time right now preparing. In fact, right now she's preparing a course that she's giving this evening, and she's doing like most of the other teachers. She's doing it online, and it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work, and I have a lot of respect for what they're doing because that's really, really tough. As you know, even as a consultant, when there's a hell of a difference between being in front of the person and doing what we have to do and doing it over the internet.
For sure.
Yeah. Yvon? Nancy starts tomorrow night and she's frightened to death, but she's also very excited about the opportunity.
I'm sure she'll do very well. Yvon, stay well, mon ami.
Yeah. Don't be a stranger. Really good to see you again.
Well, take care, and thank you very much for the invite.
Oh, thank you for everything you've done too. Salut.
Bye.
That would be the VAD.
I'll tell you, the ultimate entrepreneur. He really made that point in underlining everything he did. He likes startups. He just likes to start stuff.
Yeah, it's not, wait a minute, we can't do that. It's, wait a minute, how soon can we get it done? And he gets in there and
the first day at RDS reminds me so many times of deadlines. You think, you're the only network that goes through this. And in the real sense, the stuff going on behind is actually more interesting sometimes than the product on the air. It's all drama.
So there you go. Another person who has influenced us and continues to put one foot in front of the other.
Yeah. Fearless, good guy.
Yep.
Yeah. I was going to show you pictures of Deborah Carr, but I'll wait for another day for that. I have something because in a certain light.
Tomorrow, someone I have not seen in a very long time, Stuart Dobigan. When's the last time you saw Stuart?
In the flesh?
Yeah. It's got.
Well, actually, that's it's not that many years ago because his mom and dad for years had a cottage up near Brownsburg on Lake Louisa, very close to a place we go to. So it's been about 5 years. But working together, God, I mean, more than 20.
Was a music director and.
Oh yeah, he had a music column on Home Run, and that's when we could have somebody pick music still. He took over from, oh God, I can't think of his name. Anyway, but that's when we actually had money for people to pick music, and Stuart did a column with me a couple of times a week. We had a lot of fun, but he's really into animal.
Yeah, he's a beekeeper. That's what piqued my interest. So we're going to have him on talking about bees and probably other stuff tomorrow. And there you go.
Good. I mean, bees are an endangered species around here.
Well, that's got to be my first question, to find out what's going on. So you're looking
I'm glad you got a hold of Yvon, because it was just great to see him.
You're looking well groomed.
Today. Not bad, eh?
Yeah. Is it? Did you put
I got steamer trunks under here, but other
put
than
some Brill cream on or something?
I just threw some water on it, and but this is just starting to get.
Okay.
I look like
I'll send somebody over in the next couple of hours.
I bet you will. Yeah, kind of a hefty guy, isn't he? A pork pie hat.
Okay.
Talk
to you tomorrow.